Hello and welcome to my FlossTube channel. I'm Jean Farish and I'm so glad that we get to spend this time together. And in fact, I am getting ready to go for a couple days, just private stitching retreat with a couple of good friends. And I am so looking forward to it, not just to get away, but to have a couple days dedicated to just stitching and of course to see two of my very, very good friends. Which makes me think about travel tips. So when you are traveling with your needlework, there are a couple things I think that would be helpful to keep in mind. The first thing is to think about how you're traveling. I automatically think about getting on an airplane, the time I would spend stitching in the terminal, waiting for my flight, stitching on the flight, stitching in between flights while you're waiting for a connector, whatever. So that's one type of travel. And I feel like that kind of deserves its own little, I don't know, sort of subset. And then, of course, there's traveling by car. Now, I'm not talking about stitching while you're driving. That's not advisable. But as a passenger, what are some ways that you can stitch while somebody else is doing the driving? And I've spent my share of hours in the passenger seat on very, very long trips, knowing that the trip is going faster because I've got my stitching with me. So there are tips I think that relate to that. And then probably less often today in the US anyway is stitching, say, by train or by bus. And there are some considerations for those as well. So the first thing, of course, to ask yourself is, what is my mode of transportation? Because the answer to the question, how can I stitch effectively on this trip, the answers will vary slightly. So let's talk about stitching while flying first. So the first thing I just want to deal with is the whole thing about the TSA. And there are countless threads on Facebook and other social media platforms where people ask the question and answer the question, can I take my scissors, can I take my needles on a flight? And before I say anything else, I just want to say that the TSA agent who is checking you in is the ultimate authority, and there is no arguing with them. And if they take your scissors, it's not like they're going to take them and hold them and give them back to you when you come back through that airport on your return flight. That's not going to happen. So just be aware that anything that they confiscate is gone. So with that in mind, my first bit of advice is, yes, you can take scissors, but do not take any scissors that you are not willing to give up. I like a pair of just inexpensive scissors. These are the ones that I use the most often, and I like them because they're portable, they're tiny, they're sharp, they have a protected point, and if they get taken, I'm out a couple bucks. So that's one bit of advice for you. The regulations do say something to the effect of that you're restricted by the size of the scissor blades. And although that is technically true, not only do you need to be aware that an agent could not know that, but also regulations can and do change very, very easily and very, very quickly. So with that in mind, take something small, somewhat disposable, certainly not your heirloom scissors. Now, there are a couple of other tips that people often suggest. One is a dental floss container. And yes, those little, the little cutter thing on them is very, very sharp and very effective. So that's a good choice. But, you know, I think that it's the old thing that, you know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure applies here. By pre-cutting your threads, which I do because I use floss drops all the time, that will save you a lot of just the whole issue with scissors, so that you don't need to cut your threads to get started. Obviously, you need to cut them when you finish with a color, but you know, you could always cut those threads off later on. So that's another option too. So that's 3 suggestions there. One is to use inexpensive, somewhat disposable scissors, or scissors that you're willing to give up if you have to. The cutter on a dental floss container, and of course pre-cutting your threads. So all those things are effective. Oh, one other thing about regulations. When you are flying an international flight, as an American, your TSA guidelines apply to when you're departing. But people have often gotten tripped up when they come back home because they're leaving from a foreign country, and then a whole different set of regulations apply. So also keep that in mind. You know, you can't think that the regulations that apply to your own home country are going to apply to every country that you travel to. So keep that in mind as well. This next thing that I want to talk about, I can say applies to me very, very personally. And when I think back on some of the flights that I have been on, I was probably a pretty obnoxious co-passenger. And so I have really thought about this next thing, and I just want to say that there is a courtesy that we can extend to our fellow passengers as to how it applies to our stitching. And with that in mind, keep it simple. You know, don't bring a lot of unnecessary stuff. Bring a project that is simple, that doesn't have a lot of color changes. For example, if I'm going to use a really extreme example, but if you're planning a flight, that is not the time to be adding beads to your project. It is not a time to be working with something that's so intricate that you have to have this intense magnifier and a lamp and a lap frame and a laying tool. That's not fair to your fellow passengers. And I just keep that in mind as well. So there's a practicality and a courtesy, I think, that we need to apply to our stitching when traveling. Okay, this next tip really applies to any time you are leaving your house with your stitching, even if it's just to meet up with friends at a local coffee shop to stitch. So 2 things here. One is, don't use a Ziploc food storage bag to carry your product. Should you leave it behind, it is too easily being viewed as inconsequential, and whoever might come upon it might say, oh, well, this is just something somebody left behind. It's trash. Into the dumpster it goes. So to avoid that, do carry your things in something that resembles a project bag. It doesn't have to be expensive, doesn't have to be fancy, but something other than a Ziploc food storage bag. Okay, so since I'm here at the beach with my friends, I asked them to pull out their various travel bags. And so first of all, I just want to say, this is, you know, if you don't want to spend the money on, you know, a project bag, at least get this type. They're very, very inexpensive, and they come in lots of different sizes, so that at least your work is not in a food type Ziploc bag. And then this is also one that I brought, and this one I kind of like because it has a wider gusset, and so if you've got something like your Q snaps or things that are a little bit bigger that won't really fit in a flat bag, this type is nice. And then these are some that my friends have. So you can tell my friend Sue is a nurse, and so she has this one, this type. And this one that she got at the Barefoot Needleart in Surfside Beach, South Carolina. And then I really like this set. This is cute. Yeah. I have my little assistant here, Vanna, helping me. And then it came with this little thing that has that special little fabric so that it will hold your little orts and extra threads and stuff. So that's really cute. And I love how you've got the sea turtles, and then in here you've got and then this one, Distracted Stitcher. You want to open this one for me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So this one has a really pretty lining that is all coordinated. And this one, this is not printed, I mean, this is printed fabric, but this is quilted. These are each little individual pieces of fabric with a bee theme. And look at this one. This is really lovely. I love that. To me, that's like a Delft look, like the blue and yellow.
It's heavy zipper pull.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I like that too, and it has a thing here that you can add other little things to it. Don't open this one.
Don't open that.
Okay, and this is one that I actually made for Sue as a gift. She's a Duke fan, and this was a class that I took. And when you open it up, it has all these little zippered compartments in there to hold all your good stash.
I love that.
So these are just some alternatives to not using a. Oh yeah, one more here. Yeah, so you've got your other blue. I already showed them that one, and then this is the Blue Devil. Oh, cool. Yeah,
I have to look up who I bought it from. If you want to write a comment to Jean, she can tell you. But what I liked about it is it has little compartments that you can put all your knickknacks, whatever you need in, and then it has larger ones for small patterns.
Right.
I wish people would put their label though, so you can remember, and it just easy to travel with.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so these are some suggestions of ways to travel with your projects. The second thing is do make sure that you have some sort of identifier in your project. A business card, a piece of paper that says, if you find my precious needlework, I would so appreciate it if you would get in touch with me so that I can get it back. Here's how you get in touch with me. Today's day and age, leaving your email address is certainly a simple way of leaving your contact information. But, you also might think about leaving your phone number. I certainly wouldn't leave my address. But I think that the easier you can make it for that Good Samaritan to get in touch with you, the better off you are being reconnected with your needlework. Okay, so tell me about your experience about losing a piece of needlework while you were traveling.
So Jane, I was traveling between Houston and Chicago airports, and I had a beautiful framed counted canvas of Kathy Reese's, a mystery stitch along. And I had it in this bag. This is a big bag, but gate was really crowded, and it came out of my bag. I thought I put it back in my bag because it was too awkward to hold it. And I got home and realized I wanted to stitch on it. This has probably been 3 weeks later because we all have multiple stash and stitching, and I couldn't find it. It came out of my bag, and it's a zipper bag, but I didn't have it zippered because it was too big. And so I did a lost and found both at the airports and never found it. Kathy was wonderful. I rebought the canvas and restarted it all, but that's why you are so wise to tell us don't use Ziploc baggies where everything falls out, and carry a bag where you can put a zipper on it and nothing falls out.
And make sure you've got name and contact information in there in case a Good Samaritan does find it.
Great point. And so now on my wooden frames for needlepoint, I do write my cell phone number. I don't write my name, but I do write my cell phone number.
Great. Thanks. I don't know of any regulations in terms of TSA that prevent you from bringing your embroidery needles. I wouldn't bring 50 of them, but to bring 1 or 2 embroidery needles shouldn't be an issue. And of course, without our needles, we can't stitch, so that's sort of a given. Now, when we took the Great Parks bus trip last fall, I had some great hours of stitching on the bus as we were going from one national park to another. And I'm looking forward to a second similar itinerary coming up this coming fall, where we are going to start in San Francisco. We're going to spend 3 days in Yosemite. We're going to spend 3 days in the wine country, including that wonderful wine train trip through the Napa Valley. So if you love stitching, you love traveling, you love getting together with friends, and you like wine, and enjoy visiting the national parks, then this trip may be for you. And I will leave contact information in with the episode notes. But more to the point of this topic, I found that the bus that we were on had excellent lighting. Along the window, there was a nice little sill about 3 inches wide that was perfect for putting my little sponge and my scissors, and it was great. My fellow passengers also did a lot of stitching. There were people who had the sort of magnifiers that are like glasses that they lower down and can see. I don't know that anybody really needed extra lighting on that bus, but if in doubt, the kind of lights that come around your neck and point down, those are really good. And by the way, that comes back to that topic of courtesy. Do make sure that if you are using some sort of a task light, because they are pretty intense, that they're not shining into somebody else's eyes. So just think about that. Just think about how you would like to be treated if you were sitting and reading a book or just having a conversation with a friend and somebody across the way was stitching. How would you want that person to be courteous to you? So the golden rule, I think, applies to so many situations. And of course, we have a couple of cruises coming up, and they are always great opportunities for stitching. And again, the old keeping it simple really applies. On a cruise ship, it is, I'm starting to say unusual to find. I don't know if that's really true, but there are not a lot of outlets. So bringing any type of lighting that is rechargeable or battery powered is always a good idea. I personally, as a teacher at retreats and at classes, appreciate it when people bring cordless devices, simply because as I age, I am more and more concerned with tripping and how that can impact my own health, as well as the health of other people that are in the class. So keeping the cords to an absolute minimum is always a good idea. And let's face it, in today's day and age, there are so many great devices that are rechargeable or battery powered. There really is no need to bring in, a lot of cords. But back to the cruise ship thing. Cruise ships do not have a lot of outlets around for people to use. And so do keep that in mind if you're going on a cruise, especially if you're going to go on a cruise to stitch. And we have 2 stitching cruises coming up. And in fact, in less than 2 weeks, registration will close for our summer vacation cruise that's sailing out of Fort Lauderdale in July. Really, really excited about this one. This is kind of just like a summer camp for grown-ups where we are just going to stitch our hearts out. And quite a few people are bringing non-stitching friends or their husbands with them. And there are all kinds of things going on the ship all day long for everybody to enjoy. But we're going to find all those little nooks and crannies on the ship where there are great views and great lighting and stitching. And of course, on celebrity cruises, the food is incredible. The service is impeccable. And I don't know about anybody else, but one of the things I love about going on a cruise is that feeling of being absolutely spoiled. You leave your cabin, you come back, your bed is made. You have this wonderful meal that you didn't have to prepare, somebody else cleans up. So there's this feeling of being pampered for 7 days or 11 days or 14 days, however long the cruise lasts. That's kind of hard to come back to reality, frankly, when I get back from a cruise. But the summer cruise is a 7-day cruise, like I say, out of Fort Lauderdale. And then in September, we have an 11-day cruise out of Vancouver, British Columbia. And we're going to have 5 sea days as we cross the Pacific towards the Hawaiian Islands. And during those 5 days, lots of stitching time, lots of classes. There are 4 teachers that are going to be on board, and that's going to be a fabulous stitching experience. So again, for both of those, I'll put the contact information in with the episode notes. So I guess the final thing to talk about is what constitutes a travel project. Because very often you'll see people, again, on social media make comments like, I'm stitching such and such and such and such, and my travel project is such and such and such and such. So to me, a travel project is fairly small. It's easily portable, doesn't require a lot of paraphernalia, and is fairly simple. To me, those are the things that make an ideal travel project. For one thing, if you're traveling with friends, you still want to be able to have conversations and enjoy the surroundings, the scenery, what's going on around you. And so to have a project that has, say, a repeat border or large areas of solid stitching, those to me are the ideal travel projects. One that is full of confetti and takes a lot of concentration to pay attention to where every single stitch is, not so much. I'm not saying they're not great projects, they are, but to me, they don't make great travel projects. Also, very often people will have, say, especially needle pointers will have like a 4-inch round ornament that they're working on. That's their travel project. Cross stitchers may enjoy making, again, an ornament, a scissor fob, a small, something that, again, is easily portable, doesn't have a lot of color changes. And all of these things, I think, make them really great travel projects. If you're going on a trip for an extended period of time, I think it's also a great idea to bring a couple things with you. Not only because, well, what if you finish it? I mean, you need to have a backup plan, but also that it's kind of nice to change up a little bit and have different things to work on. But I think one of the best benefits of stitching while traveling, besides the fact that you are enjoying two of your favorite passions at the same time, traveling and seeing great sights while you're also stitching. But to me, one of the best parts of stitching while traveling is that people around you, strangers, will come up to you and say, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Or, you know, the classic thing is my grandmother used to do that, or my aunt, or whatever, or I used to do that in college, or just something that just sort of breaks the ice and allows them to initiate a conversation with a stranger. And so to me, needlework is like this great ambassador that allows barriers to come down and allows people to just get to know each other. And who knows, you may find a kindred spirit. You may inspire somebody to pick up this pastime that we love so much. And so again, that's one of the things I think that's the greatest benefit of stitching while traveling, is that it allows you to connect with other people. So I hope that some of this has been helpful to you. I hope that you have some traveling in your future as the world is beginning to open up a little bit. But even so, please stay safe, stitch happy, and I'll see you next time.